Okay, I'm gonna do a really quick lesson with you today on like how disease spreads out. And we kind of went over some of this already, so like I said, it'll be quick. So you have outbreak, epidemic, and pandemic. Okay, so out of those three terms, the smallest one, the one that's isolated the most, is going to be outbreak. So this will be in a small area. So this would be like in a town or a city. So just isolated to one certain region. Has anybody ever seen the movie Outbreak? No? Okay. It's an older movie, but it's about, well, it's a fictitious virus, but it's basically mimicking Ebola. Okay, so you know what Ebola is? What is it? Do you know any symptoms of it? No?
Diarrhea?
Yeah, you become really dehydrated. Is it good or bad?
No, it's bad.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. Why is it really bad? Yes, it kills you very easily. It's super, super contagious, and it's a hemorrhagic fever. So the fever obviously makes you dehydrated. What does hemorrhagic mean? What's the root of it? What is the root of the word? What? Hemorrhage. What does that mean? Nope. Does anybody else know?
Isn't hemorrhage like a bust?
In what?
The burn?
It's blood vessels. So when you hemorrhage, you're gonna bleed out. So with Ebola, if you ever see people of pictures with Ebola, it looks like they have blood coming out their eyes, nose, mouth, ears. So you hemorrhage out of any orifice, any opening on your body. Ebola is very, very contagious. It has a huge kill rate. So it's not something that you really want to spread worldwide. It's usually located, do you know what country?
Africa?
Yeah, it's in Africa. And it's usually located around an area called Sierra Leone. And fortunately, it usually stays in that area. Because it's so deadly, they don't really let people leave that area. If you travel to that area, then you're screened. If you have any symptoms, you can't come back into your country, because we don't want this virus getting out in the world. Now, a few years back, there was an Ebola outbreak. It's probably been more than a few, 5 or 6 maybe. There was an Ebola outbreak, and there was a team of medical professionals from the United States that went down there to help treat people. This is usually in a third world country, so they don't have a lot of medical advances. But one of the doctors ended up getting Ebola that was treating people. And they actually ended up flying him back in the United States to treat him, which they usually don't do. If you get it, you usually just have to either die with it or get over it. Some people survive it, not many. But they did fly him back. So why could that have been a problem?
You could have given it to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, he could have given it to people how?
And this air just circulates in the plane.
Yeah, so, just the people that was around him. So where would he have been around people?
In the plane.
In the airport, and then in the plane. Then when he got back in the United States, he would have been around people in the hospital. Obviously, they took the precautions. They wore the biohazard suits. They had him in the little plastic thing. It must have had some kind of air filtration system on it because, if you're coughing or something, it could get in the ductwork. So I didn't think it was a good idea. He kind of went down there knowing what he was getting into, but they did fly him back here. He did survive. One of the main things is keeping fluids in it. So like you said, when you become dehydrated, keeping the fever down. And they do have some test treatments that they were working on with it. So he did survive. But that could have very easily become an epidemic or a pandemic because it's so easily spread. So epidemic is going to be a larger area. So this would be like a country or a continent that has the disease. So this would be like if the flu broke out in the United States, or if the flu was really prevalent in the southern United States. So it's a larger area that it's covering. This term is used most commonly, even like right now with coronavirus, you hear people saying like an epidemic a lot. Corona is actually a pandemic. What do you think that one means?
Worldwide.
Yeah. Worldwide or across continents. Usually it's, when they're saying worldwide, it's usually in the northern hemisphere that they're talking about. That's where your major cities and everything are. Obviously there's not going to be anything in Antarctica. There's only a few research scientists down there. But pandemic's going to go worldwide. Alright, so right now we are in a pandemic. We're not in an epidemic. When was it an epidemic with coronavirus?
When it first
When it was in
started.
China.
Yeah, when it was in China. When it was in China, it was an epidemic. When it was in, what was the first place it broke out in? Wuhan?
Yeah,
Is that it? When it was just there, it was an outbreak. When it spread into all over China, it was an epidemic. When it got onto other continents, it became a pandemic. So, roughly last year, what was around the time that you heard about coronavirus before it got here? Do you remember what month?
January.
Okay, so most people, I think, are going with December or January. Okay, it may have been going on before that, but when we really started hearing about it, it was somewhere around December. So it may have been November, may have been January, but right in that general area. When did we get out of school?
March.
March. Okay, so if we go with December, okay, then that's roughly how long until we got out of school?
3 to 4 months.
Okay, so 3 to 4 months after we first heard about it, we were out of school because it struck the United States. So yesterday when we talked about the Black Plague, how long did it take for it to kill 2/3 of the population?
7 years.
5 years.
5 years, okay. So 5 kilometers a day in 5 years killed 2/3 of the population, which is still a pretty fast spread. I mean, you've killed off 2/3 of the population in 5 years, so that's pretty drastic. But now we have within 3 months a pandemic all over the world with this virus. What is different from the Black Plague and coronavirus that made it spread faster?
We take precautions and we know how stuff spreads better. They just let it die and just kept in the streets and put it in their water and stuff.
Yeah, so one reason that we don't have as many people dying with coronavirus as the Black Plague and as fast is because we are doing precautionary stuff, and we do have medicines that can kind of help, keep fevers down, and treatments, not necessarily something that cures it, but stuff that helps with the symptoms. But what made coronavirus spread in 3 months where it was plague that spread over 5 years?
Our world is
Yeah.
probable.
Yeah, so travel, planes. When it was the plague, what was their main way of traveling around?
Boats.
Yeah, so they used ships and boats. If you were on land, you were probably traveling by horse or by foot. So it's not going to spread as fast as now when we have planes. So planes you can be in a different country in a day easily. So do you remember what the first area in the United States that came down with coronavirus was?
California.
Yeah. Washington State, California, Oregon. So that's on what coast?
The West Coast.
West Coast. Why the West Coast?
That has the most airports.
It does have a lot of airports, but why are those airports, why were they affected more than, like, you know, on the East Coast, we have Atlanta, we have New York. Huh?
There was more people with the symptoms.
Okay, why?
More population.
What, did those planes go to China?
Yes. So when you're traveling over to Asia, so if we were traveling to Asia, more than likely we would fly across the United States to the West Coast. Then we would probably go to Hawaii and then go on over to Asia or like Australia. So I have a friend that lives in Australia. His parents live here. They fly to California, they fly to Hawaii, and then they fly over to Australia. Okay, so that's kind of the direction that you go for Asia. So if you're going backwards from China, you'd probably go China, Hawaii, and then the West Coast. So you'd probably go to Seattle, Washington, or Portland, Oregon, or LAX, one of those three airports. And those were the three areas that were hit right away in the United States because of international travel. Now from there, it spread to all the other major airports, and then from those major cities, it branched out into the smaller cities and smaller towns. But because we have so much international travel, pandemics are really common now. So if you're watching the news, when we don't have coronavirus, what's the other main virus that we plan for that usually strikes? Yeah, the flu. And if you ever see it like on the test or something, it won't be called the flu, it'll be called influenza. We just shorten it to flu, but the technical term for it is influenza. So before coronavirus, it was the flu. So we would see that the flu was breaking out over in Asia usually. We usually develop flu shots to kind of, so it looks like they might have this strain of the flu. So we try to develop a flu vaccine for that strain. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they get the strain right. There could be another one that gets over here. But for the most part, they usually get it right. So we see that it strikes over in Asia, and then we know in a few months it's going to be here. Because of international travel, you know that flu season is coming up because we can see that it starts somewhere and we know it's going to get here eventually. So pandemics are more prevalent now because of international travel and how fast we travel to different places because of planes. All right, so outbreak, smaller area. Epidemics, like your medium area, that would be like one continent, one larger area. Pandemic is going to be worldwide or across multiple continents. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about those? They're pretty straightforward, so. All right.